What's the difference between you're mad, mate, and oh yeah, I know about that? Knowledge. That's all there is. That's the only difference between the two reactions. Whether you are a Muslim, and whether you're a Hindu or a Christian or Jew, whatever, whether you're a left or right or center, whatever your culture is, you're all being manipulated by the same force. They have no interest in a world of love, a world of joy, a world of happiness and peace. They want constant emotional and mental upheavals. They want wars. They want deprivation. They want suffering.
Hi everybody and welcome back to Getting There, the podcast. Now, today's episode is one I've been thinking about for a very long time. Whether you agree with him or not, whether you've followed his work for decades, or this is the first time you're hearing his name, David Icke is one of the most polarizing, persistent voices of our time. A man banned from over 30 countries, removed from platforms, censored, ridiculed, written off, and yet somehow he is still standing and still speaking. He's still refusing to bow down to the pressure of a world that has tried again and again to silence him. And before we dive into the theories, the systems, the global agendas, the AI revolution, I want to start somewhere human. What does it feel like spending your life swimming against the tide of public opinion? What does it do to a person to hold ideas that most people are terrified to even look at? And why does he keep on going? In this conversation, we go far beyond the headlines. We explore consciousness, the nature of reality, the limits of human perception, the possibility that AI may already be conscious, and the idea that our history, our origins, our knowledge, our potential has actually been deliberately hidden from us. We ask whether we're living in a simulation and whether ancient civilizations knew more than we realised. Whether humanity's evolving or being engineered, and what this moment in history is actually asking us. This is not an episode about agreeing or disagreeing. This is just about curiosity. It's about asking the questions that most people are too afraid to ask. It's about challenging the narratives that we've been handed and exploring the ones we've never been shown. So I encourage you to sit with an open mind, challenge what you think you know, and join me in a conversation with a man who has spent his entire life trying to break the boundaries of human perception. This is David Icke. David, you have spent decades standing against governments, institutions, media, technology, and entire global systems that most people are actually too terrified to even look at. You've been banned from endless countries. You've been banned from Australia, YouTube. You've been deplatformed, ridiculed, scrutinised, and yet you've never backed down. But how are you? How are you? Are you exhausted? Are you tired? Is this shift fueling you? Human to human, how are you coping with everything?
No, I'm very energized. I guess it comes from self-identity. We are manipulated to have a limited self-identity. For instance, we are encouraged to identify as a human. And if you identify as a human, not as an experience, which is what we're having, but as an I, then you're identifying and you are self-identifying with limitation. If you follow a religion and you think you have a soul and that you are being judged by some judgmental God, in the Old Testament version, a real bloodthirsty, bloody tyrant, then you are subordinate to the God and you are subordinate to the limitations of being subordinate to the God. I don't see that. I don't see myself in those terms. I see myself as an expression of infinite awareness, an infinite consciousness that is everywhere. And I'm just an expression of it. And so I don't identify with limitation. I don't identify with being human, and therefore I don't identify with the limitations of human.
So then,
I just get on with it without thinking, "Oh, I'm 73 now. Yeah, I can't keep going." Oh, you watch me. You know what I mean?
We're watching you. It's like it's all going up another gear. But do you ever question? You've quite clearly got a message. Do you ever question why it was handed to you more than anyone else?
Well, it's a kind of an interesting story of how this all started for me, because I was born in Leicester in the English Midlands, and I was born into a council house where my brother still lives, and we were skint, to say the bloody least, and you had this feeling that, well, kind of, this is my lot. And then, because I was a very diffident kid, you wouldn't know it now, but I was. And then I started doing well in football, and I got picked for the school team, which kind of shocked me. I thought, hey, good things can happen to you, And then I went on and I became a professional footballer, because the moment I got in the school team, I know what I want to do. I want to be a footballer. And people were going, oh, yeah, of course you do. Yeah, what's the chance of that? And I thought, I'm going to do it. And then I got into football, and I finished with arthritis, and I went into journalism, which was always my second love. And then eventually in the BBC, and I became a national spokesman for a while, for a short time, for the British Green Party. And then one day, I'm still working for the BBC as an anchor, sport news anchor, and I was still then a national spokesman for the British Green Party. And I was with my son, Gareth, who's a big strapping lad now, of course, works for Iconic with me. But then he was just a little boy. It would have been 1989, maybe, 89. And where I was living was near the seafront, Ryde on the Isle of Wight. And there was a cafe there, like a Greasy Joe cafe. So we were going to go into this Greasy Joe cafe. And it was packed. So I said, come on, Gaz, we'll go up the town to get some lunch there. And then this railway worker, because there's a railway station on the front, came up to me and started talking to me about football. There's a big semi-final that day of the FA Cup. So we chatted for a bit. And then I realised Gaz wasn't here. So I knew where he would be. It would be in the newsagent shop we were standing next to, because they have steam train books in there, or had, and we like steam trains. So I knew where he would be. So I walk in to the shop, stand at the entrance, and there's Gaz looking through the steam train books. I said, come on, Gaz, we'll go up to town, get some lunch. And at that point, it was like the atmosphere changed. Like the electromagnetic field, technically, changed. It's like, it was not quite that I was in another reality, but the atmosphere had definitely changed suddenly. And then I felt my feet being pulled to the ground, like magnetically. And I'm thinking, what the? And then this, it wasn't a voice, it was like a strong thought form went through my head and said, go and look at the books on the far side. Now, I knew this newsagent shop, was going in there all the time. The books on the far side were Mills and Boon bloody novels and Barbara Cartland for the tourists in the deck chairs on the beach. What do I want to go there for? But of course, I'm in a bewildered state, and I went across, and in among the Mills and Boon was this one book that stood out because it was different. It had a woman's face on the front. It was called Mind to Mind. So I picked it up and I looked at the blurb, and the blurb said psychic. It was the the biography of a professional psychic called Betty Shine, who lived near Brighton. Now, why this was highly significant to me, that moment, was because from the start of 1989, this would be the early part now, like the spring of 1990. I'm in the shop as my memory comes back. From around the start of 1989, something very strange had been happening while I was working for the BBC and the Green Party. Every time I was in a room alone, it was like I wasn't alone. It was like there was a presence there. And all this was new to me. I hadn't been into any of this stuff before. And this continued through 1989 until just before, it was actually days before the book incident in the newsagent, that I'd been working for the BBC in Shepherd's Bush in West London. And I went back to the Kensington Hilton Hotel where I was staying overnight. And I sat on the side of the bed, empty room, and this presence was so bloody tangible, you could touch it. And I said out into the room, look, if there's something there, would you please contact me, because you're driving me up the bloody wall. So then a few days later, the book incident happened, the bookshop incident happened, or the newsagent. And so I'm stood there, and when I saw the word psychic in the blurb of the book, my immediate thought was, I wonder if this lady would pick up what the hell's been happening to me for the last year. So I read the book in 24 hours, contacted her, went to see her, and what I said to her was, I've got arthritis, finished my football career. Maybe your hands-on healing, which she also did, would help. I didn't tell her anything else because I didn't want to lead her or give her any idea of what was happening to me. So I went to see her the first time, had a nice chat, bit of healing.
A little Reiki.
Second time, yeah. Second time, same. Third time, I'm sitting on this bench in her front room, and I felt like a spider's web on my face. And what struck me immediately was I read about this in her book, that when other levels of reality are trying to lock into you, you often feel like there's a spider's web on your face. Well, that's electromagnetism. You know, when you're in a big football crowd or something and there's great excitement, and the hairs on your neck stand up, that's electromagnetism, because the crowd are generating that electromagnetic field through their excitement and their emotion. And so I'm feeling this, but I say nothing to her. And she's like, over my left knee. And suddenly she goes, whoa, I've got to close my eyes to this one. This is powerful, right? And she starts telling me this is March 1990, that I'm going to go out. She said, I'm seeing this figure in my mind, and they're telling me to tell you this. You're going to go out on a world stage and reveal great secrets. One man cannot change the world, but one man can communicate the message that can change the world. You will now be guided to knowledge, and at other times, knowledge will be put into your mind, and you'll wonder where it came from. It will be our words. And so it went on. And I'm just about to go down the road from her, get on a train, and go and present a television program for the BBC. I'm thinking, going out on a world stage to reveal great secrets, I present the bloody snooker, right? So, but there was something that said to me, go for it. This go for it. This is right. This is right.
Like a knowing.
Yeah, a knowing. Yeah, go for it. Even though everything else was going, you having a laugh, lady? What? So what happened then is almost immediately, the synchronicity of my life changed dramatically. I was finding myself being led to people, books, documents, personal experiences that were, and it's gone on to present day, which is like someone in the unseen is handing you puzzle pieces in a jigsaw pretty much in the order necessary to see where they go. So it started off, the first few years were about the fact, this accumulation of synchronistic knowledge, experience that was coming to me in various ways, that there was a network, like a secret society network that I call the global cult, that was operating through governments. It was operating through government agencies, through corporations, through what became then later Silicon Valley, Silicon Valley was just kind of emerging then, but it's really got massive now, of course. And that it was driving the direction of the world towards ever greater dystopia and control. And so I spent the first few years, and all the information coming to me was about that. And then it moved on about the mid-90s. It moved to, beyond this global cult, there is the force that it's actually originating from, and that's not even in this dimension. That's in another dimension of reality. And then it went on, because I've always worked on the principle of whatever I know, there's always more to know. Mm. And so when you reach a point, you think, well, I think I've got my head around this. So what don't I know? What you're constantly doing is driving deeper in the rabbit hole. Mm. And most people stop, even in the alternative media, they stop at it's a political conspiracy, it's a deep state conspiracy. Well, on one level it is, but it's only the way one way it plays out. It's not where it's coming from. And it went on, and the synchronicity then went to the next stage, which is this reality that we experience as solid and
physical
is actually neither, and that it's the equivalent of a virtual reality computer game. And as it went on, the understanding was that just as we play computer games, well, I don't, but as people play computer games, they put a headset on. And if you notice, when people do that, their sense of reality immediately changes. If you see compilations on the internet, the people put the headset on, and although they're in this reality, they put the headset on, they're in a completely different reality very quickly. And they scream and they fall off their chair and they run and react to what is merely information being delivered to their brain. Via what? Via the five senses. Mm. And the five senses are how we interact with this greater human virtual reality game, if you like. And then it's gone on deeper still into the nature of the afterlife, and how one level of the so-called afterlife is actually another level of this matrix, this simulation. And as the Buddhists talk about the wheel of samsara, the reincarnation wheel of samsara, where you go out and you then come back in, and you go out and you come back in, that's all part of this simulated reality to keep us entrapped. And entrapped how? Entrapped perception. Keep our perception entrapped, believing that what we're experiencing is real when it's something that's been specifically created for reasons we'll probably come to entrap perception. So there comes a time, and for me it was very early on, because in those days the idea that there was a global network manipulating human society. Are you having a laugh? Are you crazy?
Surprised I didn't burn you at the stakes. But do you remember the first piece of information that you found this out at? And we spoke earlier about you had a knowing. When you saw this first piece of information, did you know that was true, or was there the human part of you that was like, no, this can't be true? Did you feel torn?
Yeah, no, I have a specific way that I work. First of all, unless because of previous information, I know something's a load of old crap, I won't dismiss it just because it's far out. What I'll say is, okay, I'm going to put it on the back burner and I'm going to let the saucepan sizzle and I'm going to see what else comes. And if it doesn't come, well, it doesn't come and I'm not going there.
Do you wait for synchronicities for this to happen, or more information on that?
Well, what has tended to happen in my life is that all these different stages I'm talking about, when they have first appeared, suddenly information relating to that subject suddenly kind of comes in all directions. So you get to know that, if this is a direction that I'm being kind of guided into, then a lot more information is going to come on this. But I'm not going to dismiss it, and I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to put it on the back burner. And eventually, so much information comes on that subject in a way that's confirming everything else, that you go, okay, you crossed my line. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to write about it. And of course, when you're doing that, crucial is not to care what people think about you. Because if you look through history, anyone that has talked about anything outside the norm of the time. See, one of the great ways, foundation ways that humans are controlled is by controlling the sense of normal. So the sense of normal changes with the advent of technology and what have you, and knowledge. But there's always a normal. Some people call it the Overton window, the area of acceptable thought and discourse. And you know that whenever you leave that normal, whatever it is at the time, see, I can talk about things now,
yeah,
and people are going, "Oh yeah, mate, I can see that now." Well, you couldn't
see it before
back in the 90s because you were ridiculing me and hurling abuse at me for being a nutter.
Did that ever make you want to stop?
No, never. No, just drives you on. So, and also, people were saying to me, when you talked about this, didn't you think people would call you mad? And you think, well, do you know what? I'd actually work that out. You know what I mean? Of course, yeah. when you step out of the normal, that which is still perceiving normal to be reality is going to ridicule you and hurl abuse, and so you accept that. It's like my philosophy is: look, laugh at me if you want, dismiss me if you want, believe whatever you like. It's none of my business, but I have a right to communicate what I'm researching as well. And I'm not saying you must believe it. Don't believe it. I'm not bothered. What's it matter to me? I'm 73. But I'm going to put it out there. Yeah. But in putting it out there, you're going to get all the shite back. But you do it anyway. And, because, if you look at the biggest limitation that people have is, or one of the biggest, maybe even the biggest, is the fear of what other people think. And when you fear what other people think, you are, you then limit your perception. Certainly you limit what you'll say about your perceptions to what will not get you thought about in a bad way or in a ridiculing way. And so at that point, you're not living your life anymore. You're living what you think is acceptable to other people. Now, my philosophy again is believe what you like, but I'm going to believe what I bloody like, mate. And I'm going to put it out there. And if you don't like it, we'll do the other thing. It's all the same to me. And it's getting over this fear of what other people think. You see, if you ask people, put your top 3 or 5 biggest fears, right up there with a vast numbers of people would be fear of speaking in public. Why? Because you stand there in front of these people, and these people are controlling you.
Judging you. Because
you are fearing, this is what the fear of speaking in public is. You are fearing the reaction of other people. Now, I react how you like. I none of my business, but I'm going to say what I think. So once you lose that fear of what an audience may think of what you're saying, you can talk to 10 people or you can talk to 100,000. It's all the same because the dynamic has changed. You're no longer judging what you're saying by the reaction of the audience. You're judging what you're saying by the research you've frickin' done. And like I say, if you look through history, anyone that's really pushed awareness forward in any field, you will see them ridiculed, dismissed, and abused. But in the end, they're proved right. And what I've been doing over the years, I've been researching this stuff. I've been putting it out there. And of course, then the eating and the pudding and so on. The pudding is in the eating and stuff. So has what I've said turned out to be true? Now, in the early days, that wasn't possible because you were just putting it out there. And people weren't seeing that it had validity. Sounded crazy. But with the passage, I mean, I'm going to be 36 years now. With the passage of the decades, what I've been saying over the years has turned out to be the way the world has been moving, ever more obviously, ever more swiftly. And therefore, not only do you get more credibility from people because, hey, that bloke said this, but you have more and more confidence of the way you're working and how you work because it's turned out to be true. But again, it's an interesting thing that once I put something out there, and people, they might say, "Oh yeah, well, it's turned out to be true then about this." Well, by then I'm somewhere else. I'm deeper in the rabbit hole because what don't I know then? And so you're basically, on one level, you're putting it out there and it turns out to be true. But by the time it's acknowledged to be, you're somewhere else, and people that, oh yeah, it was true about that. But what he's saying now, bloody crazy, mate. Have you heard what he's saying now? So it's been a constant theme of the deeper you go in the rabbit hole, the more people find it difficult to see where you're going. But what I have found now in the last few years is that more and more people are getting more and more interested actually in the more far out things, I've got to say. It's the far out things that are getting the big numbers and the big reaction now. So the minds are opening, there's no doubt about it, to the fact that this world is not just a little bit not like we think it is. It's nothing at all like we think it is.
And what about, let's talk about when you found out the world's being run by reptiles, essentially. Do you remember the first piece of information that you saw or that changed your perspective and that landed with you?
Well, I started to pick up bits and bobs. I went to America in 1996. And like I said earlier, a subject will come into my life like a new subject, and suddenly information's coming at me from all angles. And I start to recognize that sequence now. My God, I should. And I was in America, and I was speaking in different cities to no bugger, by the way.
I heard this. You were putting out chairs and no one was even coming.
Absolutely. But I was talking in different cities. And over a period of 15 days, I met 12 different people who told me the same story in different places, different parts of America. This is how the synchronicity of my life has worked since the Betty Shine incident, whereby they were telling me that they'd seen someone who apparently seemed human transform into a non-human, a reptilian form at the time in that sequence. And not all the non-human element of this is reptilian, but it seems to be a dominant force. And so once that had come into my life, suddenly I'm meeting more and more and more people. I was coming across people who'd taken part in satanic rituals. I mean, human sacrifice rituals.
So you met people that actually done them themselves, or witnesses?
Yeah, that had been there and witnessed them, yeah. Often against their will, by the way.
And they told you first-hand encounters of what they saw?
Yeah. Well, I've been given first-hand encounters of that all over the world, mate. From, as I've travelled, because I've been to...
Could you paraphrase maybe what they would tell you?
Yeah, well, what they would tell me is, first of all, there is a reptilian race overwhelmingly operates in another dimension of reality, what we call the astral dimension. And it's interesting because when people talk about heaven or other dimensions, they tend to look up, don't they? Oh, heaven, I'm going to heaven. No, it doesn't work like that. What we call the human world is just a band of frequency. Actually, it's quite a small one. And just as you have the analog radio and television stations all sharing the same space, but they're on different wavelengths, so they don't interfere with each other. No, they're not aware of each other. Unless they're very close on the dial, you get interference. And that's how reality works. In the space that we're sitting in now is infinity. All the dimensions and realities of infinite reality are all in the space we're sitting in now. But we are only able to access one band of frequency, which we call the human world. Some psychic people can kind of expand that a bit and see other worlds or whatever. But most people are stuck with that. And there's a reason for that. I talked about the headset. You put the headset on and suddenly you're in another reality and it completely takes over your sense of reality. Well, this is a biological computer. It's the equivalent of a headset. And what it's doing is decoding the simulation, the Matrix. In fact, those Matrix movies, in their basic portrayal, were very, very accurate in the basic portrayal of what this reality is. So when I started to understand this, of course, you look at mainstream science and what they've come up with and all that stuff. And what the five senses do is they take wave information, it's electromagnetic field at our level. And the five senses turn that waveform information into electrical information. That's what the five senses are doing. And they communicate it to the brain. And the brain has different areas, there's the visual part is here, which decode the different senses, the information from the different senses, delivered in that electrical form. And then it forms together the reality that we think is outside of us. And I grant you, I'm looking around here, it looks like it's outside of us. but it's actually in here. This is where the world that we're experiencing actually exists. And what's fascinating is that this technological kind of explosion that's happening, getting faster and faster, is mirroring the matrix, the simulation, and how we interact with it. So, in this room will be, I'm sure, Wi-Fi, right? And in that Wi-Fi radiation field, which we can't see,
but we know it exists,
it is the entire internet. Now, that's a good point you make. If I said to people who knew nothing about computers,
like 100 years ago,
yeah, there's it wouldn't have existed then, but bring it up to present day. If you knew nothing about computers, and I said there is a field of information in this room which you could tap into anywhere in the world, and it's a completely global reality, which we call now the internet, people would say, you're bloody mad, mate. What are you talking about? But because they now know about computers and they know about Wi-Fi, you say the same today, new normal, and they'll go, oh, yeah, mate, yeah, Wi-Fi, computers, yeah, I know about that, yeah. Completely different. And what's the difference between you're mad, mate, and oh, yeah, I know about that? Knowledge. That's all there is. That's the only difference between the two reactions. So you get a computer, and the computer logs into Wi-Fi, and it decodes the Wi-Fi information, which is waveform, into a completely different form on the screen. It's graphics, it's moving pictures, it's words, whatever, on the screen. And in its Wi-Fi form, it's a radiation field of information. That's exactly what this biological computer is doing. And so where is all that information that you see on the screen, where it's in a completely different form to the Wi-Fi? It's inside the computer. And our interaction through the five senses with the Wi-Fi of the cosmic reality, if you like, the simulation, is also inside the computer. So many things start to make sense when you talk about this, because what is death? People are terrified of death, because, if you want to keep people frightened of death, then you keep from them what death really is. And if my consciousness that's experiencing this human world currently wanted to pick up that can, it couldn't do it, because the frequency of my consciousness, your consciousness, everyone's consciousness is so different to the frequency of the can that I couldn't pick it up. So what we do is we take on an outer shell, a vehicle, which is resonating within the frequency band we want to interact with, and then I can pick the can up. And what the biological computer is doing is decoding the matrix. It's giving us, constantly giving us the cosmic internet as a sense of reality. When the biological computer ceases to exist, ceases to function, dies, what does it do? It stops decoding the matrix. And that's when, and I've listened to and read endless over the years, near-death experiences, accounts, where people, where their body ceases to function, they find themselves in a completely different reality that's nothing like this one. And then the body is revived, and suddenly they find themselves back here. But all that death is the decoder of the matrix, so the human level of it anyway, ceases to function. So it ceases to decode the matrix.
But
just very quickly, what happens when we have a desktop computer and the screen goes black? We say, my computer's died, right? Exactly. What does the computer stop doing when it ceases to function? It stopped decoding the internet, the Wi-Fi field. And that's exactly what happens at death.
So what do you think happens when we die?
Well,
is it like another realm? And obviously, I know you unfortunately lost your daughter.
Yeah.
So knowing all that you know, and you being human, and you being a father, did that help you navigate your grief?
100%. I said at the time when Carrie died, I don't know how people cope with their loved ones dying, like young. She was only 48. When they think the lights go out and that's it. It's hard to imagine, the sense of loss. But with Carrie, I know that what she is, like what we all are, is an expression of consciousness, a state of being aware. And therefore, she's not ceased to exist. What ceased to exist, ceased to function, is the vehicle she used to interact with this reality. And so, it's been a sequence as you go deeper in the rabbit hole. So I first of all realized early 90s that this global cult of secret societies existed with an interlocking leadership mission control that was manipulating human society in a very, very negative way. The vast majority of people in the world are not having a good time. They're trying to survive another day, often, all over the world, in Africa, South America, Central America, Asia, etc. Many, many people in the West, too. And then I kind of realized that this other level, this astral level that interpenetrates this one, was where this manipulation was really coming from. And we can get into why in the early 90s, I realized as I was researching this, that a lot of these big, rich and famous cultists were involved in satanic ritual and human sacrifice ritual, right? And we'll come to that. But I asked the question, obviously, why, and eventually the answer of why came. But so I realized that this other dimension was where this manipulation was coming from. And the cult basically represents, within our dimension of reality, human, the agenda of that non-human level. And I could see that it was set up specifically to make things deeply unpleasant for humans. So again, the question was why. But on the subject of the afterlife, I had another why. I thought, I can understand why, maybe consciousness can be tricked or manipulated into coming into this reality with all its challenges and what have you. But when you leave the body, when your consciousness leaves the body, the near-death experiences describe, why the bloody hell would you come back? Having, traveled the world researching this, maybe 60 countries or so, before I started getting banned from loads of them, why would you come back when so many people are having such a hard time? And then, again, the synchronicity of my life, in the roadmap, my new book, I go into all this and I put all this together in real detail. I then realized that actually this reincarnation cycle is real. And I researched that to the nth degree. And the Buddhists have this concept of what they call the wheel of samsara, where you leave the body, you go through a cycle and you come back. And you're learning lessons to evolve. Load of old crap, by the way. That whole concept is part of keeping us in the matrix, which is multi-leveled. And so I started to realize that this simulation has another level too. This astral level and the human level are actually all within the matrix. And so when you leave the body, you go into this astral level, which you believe is like heaven or whatever. And then you go through this sequence where you're told by the authority of the astral, you've got to go back to learn lessons, and you didn't get this right, you didn't get that right. And all you got to do is listen to near-death experiencers in their millions to see the common themes of what they experienced in these terms. And I realized that reincarnation, while real, is fundamentally part of the trap, because you stay in the closed system. And people or consciousness in the astral, what people call souls, is as manipulated as it is here. It's just a different form of manipulation. And so you keep going on this wheel of samsara, in and out of this shite hole, often for so many people, until you realize what's happening.
So the minute you understand that the wheel of samsara is not real, you break out of that.
Yeah,
level.
you do.
And all it takes is knowledge?
Well, yeah, it does, because this is another fundamental part of it. Even mainstream science acknowledges that every time we think and every time we feel emotion, we are generating a frequency. Yeah. And that frequency relates to the nature of the emotion and the nature of the thought. So things like fear, anxiety, depression, conflict, war, hatred, regret, resentment, they're low, slow frequencies. It's been well established. Things like joy, happiness, peace are high frequencies. Appreciation is a high frequency. And these entities, these astral entities, many of which take a reptilian form, but nothing like all of them, want to keep us in a low vibrational state. So the next question was, why? Why create this simulation? Why do what you're doing? And then you start to realize, and this is when we'll come to the reason for satanic ritual, started to realize in the synchronicity of my life that these entities are feeding off human energy. And it's a particular type of human energy. It's that low vibrational energy. It's fear, it's depression, it's hatred, it's conflict, it's war. And I came across the work of a guy called Robert Monroe. Robert Monroe was he was like a media executive, a radio executive, as I recall. And he started something called the Monroe Institute. And what he did, he popularized astral traveling, it's called. So you have a near-death experience, which is when the body ceases to decode the matrix and you find yourself in a different reality. Astral traveling is when people, very much still bodily alive, project their consciousness into the astral dimension. A lot of people can do this. He became brilliant at it. So brilliant that the United States military psychological wing started a project called Gateway, and the CIA declassified the report on it some years ago. And Gateway got Robert Monroe and got other people that had this ability to project their consciousness into this astral dimension to run it under a controlled situation, so that they could try to get some understanding of what they were experiencing, what they were seeing. And one interesting thing, and this is in the U.S. military report, is that these people came across in the astral dimension so many reptilian entities that the Gateway Project gave them a collective name. They called them the alligators. And Robert Monroe and others talked about the fact that what they learned in these astral travels, and Robert Monroe wrote a series of books about it, was that these entities are feeding off low vibrational human energy. And he gave the name of that energy the title Loosh. They're feeding off Loosh. There's a chapter in the roadmap called Loosh Farm, which is what this is. Now, this starts to put into context why this world is as it is. You see, they have, and I'm talking about the manipulators of the different levels, including the cult and the astral manipulators, the origins of it. They have no interest in a world of love, a world of joy, a world of happiness and contentment, peace. They want constant emotional and mental upheavals. They want wars. They want deprivation. They want suffering. All of these things that are necessary to generate this Loosh energy. And if you remember in the first Matrix movie, there was a point where the Morpheus character held up a battery and said, the Matrix is a computer-generated dream world designed to turn humans into one of these. And it was like, within an apparently fictional movie, it was a profound statement of actually what's going on. So then we come to the question of the satanic human sacrifice rituals. So in the early, which relates to this, so in the early 1990s, I started putting together this global cult and how it was driving the direction of human society. Which is why, like when COVID broke, virtually the whole world reacted the same. Every country, virtually every country, not quite every country, but virtually every country, especially in the West, reacted the same. You now have the digital IDs coming in, and they're coming in around the world. What, at the same time? What was it? Are they psychic? What's going on? And you're having the digital currencies coming in because it's a global agenda. You know, it's a borderless global agenda. The borders of countries are just for human consumption. The cult is global. It manipulates China as it manipulates the United States and Europe. So what I started to see as I was uncovering this cult in the early 1990s is that major players, at least major players, and a lot of the not so major ones, were taking part in satanic rituals. And there was two common themes. One was satanic ritual. The other one was pedophilia. It was everywhere I looked, really, in this cult, if you get deep enough. And so my question was, why? What are they doing bloody satanic rituals for? Why the pedophilia? And then you kind of remember that in the ancient world, they used to do human sacrifice rituals. They used to sacrifice young virgins to the gods. Young virgins, code for children, which is what so many of these human sacrifice rituals evolve today. And you had it done openly because in those days it was acceptable. And it was a sacrifice to the gods. It was a gift to the gods, right? So my next question was, well, what did the bloody gods get out of it then? What's all that about? And then you also see that, we talk about pantheons of gods, like the Greek pantheon with Zeus and all these other characters in the Greek pantheon of gods. But there's also African pantheons. There's a Roman pantheon. There's a Celtic pantheon. And you start to realize that all over the world, in the different cultures and the different eras, they had pantheons of gods. And they gave them different names because they were different languages and they were different cultures, but then the penny drops. It's the same gods, right? And it's the same gods they're still doing the sacrifices to today, these rich and famous bloody Satanists. So why? Well, we come back to Lush. When you are, understandably, being put through this human sacrifice ritual, the rituals are designed to generate maximum terror in the victim in the run-up to the sacrifice. And terror is a profoundly powerful, low vibrational energy. And if I look at you now and you were in an emotional state, I could pretty much tell.
You could feel it. If I walked through the door upset or something, you can feel that.
You can feel it. Well, that's a very, very good point, which I'll come to here. But if I look at you and you're in an emotional state, I can see by your facial expression and I can see by your body language pretty much how you're feeling. What I can't see, but you can feel, that's absolutely spot on, is the energy you're giving off as a result of that emotional state. That energy is an astral phenomenon. When we are feeling that emotional stress, that emotional upheaval, that terror in this case, that energy that we're giving off is going into the astral dimension. And that's where the entities that are overriding or overseeing the ritual beyond human sight, beyond what the scientists call visible light, which is tiny, ridiculously tiny, what we can see. And they're feeding off it. And what also happens with terror is that it releases an adrenaline in the blood, which these Satanists in the human world conducting the ritual, to them it's a nectar. It's like a drug. And it's been described to me by Satanists and people against their will Satanists who've have experienced this, that when the Satanists drink the blood of the victim, that adrenaline, they can go absolutely bloody crazy, right? Because it's like a drug. And that's what we call adrenochrome.
Yeah.
And that's what these people, there's stories galore in Washington, D.C., etc., about, people drinking adrenochrome. That's this adrenaline-laced blood. So what you start to put together is that these entities operating in the astral dimension, they've been interacting with humans through satanic rituals and human sacrifice rituals all the way through what we call human history, because the aging process is non-existent in the astral. And they're still doing it today. And that's what these rich and famous Satanists that are major players in this cult are doing. They're interacting with these entities. And it's been described to me by Satanists around the world how in the major rituals they have seen entities appear through the energetic field into a ritual. They can't stay for very long, but they appear, and they sometimes, often they manifest as reptilian, but they're not always.
Can I ask a question? I don't know if anyone's ever asked you this. They probably have. But just listening to what you're saying there seems to be some like similarities to like aliens and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think that they are all the same form and we're just being told there is an alien, but it's out there and just to kind of distract us? And then my next question is, could you be a mixture of both? Are there people that are like kind of going between fields?
Yeah, definitely. What we call aliens are overwhelmingly astral entities that come into this dimension. And they're also non-humans within the Earth. I mean, I've picked up enough information about that over the decades to say, okay, I can see that's a level as well. And a lot of these underground bases, what they call DUMBs, deep underground military bases, about 130 odd or more now in America and around the world, they go down levels, and you need a higher security clearance the lower you go. And so there's lots of people that work at these bases in the higher levels of the underground bases. They have no idea what's going on down here. But you go low enough and it opens out, and they interact with these non-human entities. And a lot of the, if not all, the really advanced technology is actually being transferred into the underground bases this way to human scientists. And then what they do is they bring it out into the human realm in a sequence. So we see on the surface in the human realm all the latest technology. Have you seen what they've discovered now? But actually, it's long been known about in the underground bases. It's coming out in a sequence, and what they then do is they get front people to front up how the whole thing came about. And who discovered it and what have you. And some people, are not involved in this, and they do discover things. But I'm talking about this main thrust. And I remember a BBC documentary about Silicon Valley and the all the things that have been technologically created there. And there was this in this documentary. That was a 2-part documentary. There were a series of garage doors in Silicon Valley. And the voiceover was saying, yeah, and this so and so was discovered behind this garage door, and some was discovered behind this garage door, and so on. And I had this picture of people in the cult going, too many garage doors, mate. We need another cover story. They're not going to keep buying garage doors because it's coming out of the underground bases. And if you notice, since long past, there's no gap where people are strumming their fingers, sitting around a table thinking, well, we can't go to the next level of human control because we've got to have somebody discover the next level of technology. No, it's getting faster and faster and faster all the time because it already exists. So in terms of the entities in the astral dimension, they do come into this reality, and that's why they are, so many people around the world, and people call them nutters, of course. They say, look, I was in my bed and I woke up and this entity just appeared at the end of the bed. And someone else will say, oh, well, I saw this UFO and it appeared out of nowhere and then it disappeared into nowhere. And people go, oh my God, what have you been on, mate? But it's perfectly explainable.
Of course. The
electromagnetic spectrum, which is basically our experienced reality, is around 0.005% of the energy that exists in the universe in all its different forms. 0.005%. Some people say it's as high as 0.5%. Doesn't matter. It's tiny. Visible light, which is the only band of frequency we can see, everything we're looking at now is within that band of frequency.
Yeah, like we can't see the Wi-Fi, we can't see how you feel, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Exactly. The visible light is a smear of the 0.005%. So basically, if you said to people, you look around the space you're in. Can you see everything in the space you're looking at? They go, oh yeah, of course I can. You see all of it. Yeah. No, you're seeing a band of frequency. So, when a UFO or an entity enters visible light, you're able to see it. But to the observer, it's appeared out of nowhere. And when it leaves visible light, it appears to disappear into nowhere. But it hasn't disappeared at all. It's just entered and then left the frequency band that you can see.
Or have we had a personal, because sometimes you see people report UFOs and they'd say, I saw it, but my friend didn't. Is it a case of that we as humans have shifted our frequency to be able to see where that already exists?
100%. You see, everyone's operating on different frequencies. What we and your frequency overwhelmingly relates to your perception. So if you are in a perceptual state that says, I'm just little me, I've got no power, that you're operating in a very low vibrational state. If you self-identify with being an expression of all that is, has been, and ever can be, infinite awareness, having a brief human experience, then that self-identity, that expanded self-identity, means that you are operating on an expanded level of frequency. So everyone's operating on different frequencies, and our perceptions are basically dictating the frequency field on which we operate. And that's why I've been saying over all these years, the whole foundation of the conspiracy to enslave humanity is founded on control of perception. Because if they can bring you into a perception that says, I'm just little me and I'm only human, and when my body dies, then so do I, or I'm subordinate to some judgmental God, and I've got to make sure that he judges me in the right way. That's a low vibrational state. And when you're within the matrix, you are in the matrix and of the matrix. You're getting your entire perceptions from the matrix, from the simulation. And the manipulation of the simulation. But when you expand your awareness, your self-identity, to actually, I'm spirit, for want of a word. I am a state of awareness. I am a state of formless awareness that can experience infinity infinitely and do. But I'm now having a brief human experience. That is an expanded higher frequency. And so when you leave the body in that state of awareness of your true infinite self, you're freaking out of here.
Right, so I've got a question then. So how do all of our realities coexist? So, for example, with the whole war in Israel and Gaza, I had to stop watching it because I felt like it was really low vibe. And there was part of me that was like, I'm feeding into, maybe from a selfish point of view, I found the whole thing so horrific and unhuman that I decided to step back. I don't have any news outlets on my phone. Obviously, if I'm going to interview someone, I'll do some research. But how, if I'm here lifting my vibration and choosing to not see maybe what's happened, does that mean that someone else's reality is not mine? And how do they coexist?
We live in a world where the human body is the vehicle for infinite levels of consciousness to experience this realm. Because the body is interacting with this human frequency reality, you can have a high vibrational consciousness and you're still experiencing this reality because you're doing it through the body, which is interacting with this reality. Or you can have a very low vibrational consciousness and you're still experiencing this reality because the body's interacting with this reality. But what you can do, and it's something I've worked on over the years, is you can, and I've had to, frankly, because some of the stuff that I work with over the years, as you will have noticed,
so dark.
Yeah. So you have to find a way of researching it writing about it without getting caught in it.
Shielding yourself.
Yeah, and it's what I call becoming the observer. It's not that you are cold about a situation, but my philosophy is, if I can't do anything about it, certainly in the short term, then what's the point of me getting emotionally drawn into it? Because I'm just bringing myself down for no benefit for that situation. So, but what you can do is you can become an observer. You can become aware of the horrors that are going on, and you can do everything you can to expose the horrors and what's behind it and why. But you don't get emotionally pulled into it, because then you get drained for no benefit to the people that you're observing. And so I've reached a point where I can do that. Like, I've been exposing the horrors of Gaza and the Palestinians publicly since about 1994-95, when I started writing books about this stuff. And it staggers me that people are only just starting to see it, because they've been slaughtering Palestinians all the way through the years. And you can write about it, you can expose it, you can uncover what's behind it, but you have that you're observing, and to a very large extent, that's what takes you out of one of the greatest ways that we're pulled into the illusion, and that's drama. Drama all the time. If you turn the news on, what are you looking at? You're looking at a series of dramas, and what dramas do is they draw you in. They hijack your attention. And if you hijack your attention on something that's deeply unpleasant, then you're producing loose. That's affecting your emotional and mental state. But you can observe it without getting emotionally pulled into it, and that's what I'm not saying it's easy, but that's what I've worked on doing.
So how has this made you feel about God? Or whatever it is, because we spoke earlier about, you said your life's been driven by synchronicity, so something will happen, and almost, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but some kind of guidance and something divine that is guiding you. So beyond that, it makes me feel that there's something perhaps good that would be guiding you to raise an awareness. And how does that make you feel about the ultimate creator, or towards God or the universe?
Well, this is what I go into in part of the roadmap. There's 28 chapters in the roadmap, plus a postscript. About 5 chapters are about religion. We have been manipulated, I say we as a human race, to worship that which is controlling us, while believing it is the goodness that's people call God. We have been so manipulated that if you think that they say there's 8 billion people in the world, it's estimated that about 5.4 billion of them identify either as Christian, Muslim, or Hindu. Never mind all the other religions. And so what are these religions, and where do they come from? This brings us to a massively important point of how the few control the many. And if you look through history, how it's always been like that. Look through history. The few have always controlled the many. How do they do that? Well, they get the many, first of all, to give their power to the few, but they also get the many locked in to rigid, unquestioning belief systems.
Almost like Plato's cave, isn't it?
Yeah, Plato's cave was a very symbolic way of describing the human plight. What I'm talking about with the illusory matrix, etc., the Plato's cave was describing all that, all those centuries ago. For people who haven't come across Plato's cave, the story he told, and basically people forget this, what Plato was doing was describing what his mentor Socrates said. So it's called Plato's cave, but really it was
Socrates' idea.
Socrates' story. And it was that there's a cave and there's all these prisoners shackled in the cave, and the only thing they can see is one wall of the cave. There's a fire behind them, and there's people walking past the fire, and they're casting shadows on the wall. And because the prisoners can only see the frickin' wall,
they can only see the shadows.
They think that's reality. And it's an interesting part of the story, very relevant, where some of the prisoners became experts on the shadows on the wall. That's the academics and the orthodox scientists. Yeah. They're taking an illusion and thinking it's real and looking at it, but not realizing it's an illusion. One of the prisoners escapes, gets out, realizes that actually it is an illusion, the world's very different, comes back, tries to tell the prisoners.
It's a bit like you.
Yeah. Tries to tell the prisoners,
what it is.
Hey, it's an illusion.
Yeah.
And they go crazy. They want to kill him.
Yeah, they call him crazy, basically.
Yeah, basically. That's what I mean. That's the way the way it works. But you have this situation with Plato's cave where he is describing precisely the nature of the human plight. And so the more you kind of you understand about this, and then you look at these ancient stories and the shamanistic stories and the stories going way back, and you see they'd sussed it. All that time ago they'd sussed it. But now you have orthodox science, which is just another religion, and with its holy books, the holy books of orthodox science, that have put the lid on that in so many ways. And oh no, they were just primitives. No, they understood it more than you do, mate. So if we look at belief systems, what do belief systems do? I'm talking about religious belief systems, political belief systems, left and right.
Yeah.
What they do is they are prisons of the mind, right? So if I am a Christian or a Muslim or a Hindu or follow Judaism, whatever, then I have a story. And I have a story that has limits. And if I go beyond the story, then I'm a blasphemer. I'm no longer a Christian or a Muslim or whatever. So if I'm going to still be that religious follower, I have to stay within the story. And on the other side, and this is why I've said over the years, this cult couldn't care less what you believe, so long as you believe it rigidly and without question, because then they got you. Because you will not, therefore, to stay in the religion, go beyond it into the infinity of potential knowledge, understanding, insight. You won't go there, because if you go there, these walls fall and your religious belief disappears. I talk in the roadmap about the historical background to these religions, these major religions, and it never happened, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, it never happened. Look at the evidence. And so you then have a political belief system, like I'm of the left. If you're talking about that, you're not of the left anymore. You sound like right to me. And okay, I'll stay in the box because I want to stay in the. I want you to think I'm a lefty. And then you've got the right. They're a box, And anyone that says, oh, well, maybe the left have got something to valid. Oh, no, you're not MAGA anymore, right? And so all these belief systems are prisons of the mind, rigid prisons of the mind. And they have one thing in common. You will not explore infinity of possibility beyond the belief system because you'll no longer be the belief system. And so once they've created, I say they, this network of control, once they've created the belief systems, rigid, unquestioning, they play them off against each other. And they divide and rule the target population. So we're fighting among ourselves to such an extent that we don't look up and see that the same hand is holding the strings to all of us. And laughing.
But when we spoke earlier, when we were talking about this new normal and the world's changed, for me, I feel like the kind of trans explosion and for me, the core of what is male and female, and we now have to accept that people can have gender dysmorphia and you can be a trans and you can be this. Do you think this is part of a wider plan to distort us?
First of all, we are being moved step by step. I've been writing about this for a long time, towards a different human body that's far more synthetic and does not procreate as we now procreate. And when you look at books like Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, written in 1932, he's talking about this. He's talking about world stage hatcheries and how children no longer have parents. They're brought up by the state, and they're brought up in certain ways to program them from birth to be subordinate to the state, and how they are procreated through technological means. And the kind of things that he wrote about in 1932, the technology, it's coming online. They're introducing it, like technological wombs, etc.
But even like you said, the synthetic bodies, do you think that's come as well from the COVID jabs, that they're going to have two different types of human races potentially?
Definitely, that's part of it. And the COVID hoax was designed overwhelmingly to get as many people jabbed. Now, billions got jabbed, but not every jab carried the potent stuff, because you see how many people have died and had their health destroyed by this jab. Well, imagine if every single jab had the potent stuff, then they simply wouldn't be able to hide it. I mean, in terms of personal experience, people know people who've had the jab and died, or had the jab and never been the same again. They know themselves, a lot of people who've had the jab. But if everyone had the potent stuff, they simply wouldn't be able to hide it. I mean, in the mainstream media, they've had to acknowledge young sports people just dropping dead after having the jab, but they've kept quiet about the real scale of the effects and the consequences of it. So they're trying to get it into you in many other different ways as well. And there was a Japanese study that came up with the number of different ailments that they put down to the jab, and it's phenomenal. And so many that if you got the ailment, you wouldn't say, oh, it's because I had the jab, because there doesn't seem to be any connection, especially with the passage of time. But and I've been in touch with people around the world who've been researching this, like scientifically, where they've looked at the blood of fake jab, because it's not really a jab by previous criteria, it's not a vaccine. And they've looked at it through an electron microscope, and they've seen these self-replicating nano systems forming themselves, like they've almost got a form of consciousness in the blood. And so this fits two things that I've been talking about since way back. One, that they're trying to make the body more synthetic. Now, it's no accident that one of the biggest, if not fastest growing discipline of science is now called synthetic biology, or synbio, where you create synthetic organs, you create synthetic ways of mimicking what people call natural organs, natural systems. And the other thing is, and I've been talking about this for so long, writing about this for so long. You know what I talk about control of perception? Well, up to this point, they've had to control perception by controlling information. So, for instance, in various parts of the world, they sell you different religions from the earliest age. And if you think about it, where do Hindus come from? Overwhelmingly, not all, but overwhelmingly. They come from the Hindu parts of the world and Hindu families. Where do Christians in America come from? They come from the southern states of America, overwhelmingly. Where do Muslims come from? Well, they overwhelmingly come from the Middle East. Well, that's obviously not been a place where they've sat down and worked it out and used their choice and used their discernment to come to a conclusion. I'm going to be a Muslim, I'm going to be a Hindu, I'm going to be a Christian. It's dictated by where they were born and the environment they were brought up in. This is why Christians obviously come from Christian families, and Hindus from Hindu families, and Muslims from Muslim families. Imagine if the person who's now a Christian in the southern states of America was born in India or born in the Middle East. Would they now be a Christian? No, they'd be a Muslim or they'd be a Hindu. So basically, these programs are literally programs. People are programmed to believe in this religion or this political ideology or that ideology. Obviously, some people come to their own conclusions as they get older, but overwhelmingly, that's the basis of it. And so, the whole foundation of human control has been to sell belief systems and to sell perceptions. And they've done it by controlling information. So they control information in that religious setting, and they control information through censorship. What is censorship? It's making sure that the system's version of reality is what people hear, and any other version is marginalized, deleted at best. But what they now wanted, because they have to hold you in a perceptual state that is within the frequency band of this matrix. Because once you get out of it, then you start to see things they don't want you to see. And at the end of your life, you can get out the whole bloody thing if you're a vibration that is beyond the matrix. So what they had been looking for is a way of making sure they can technologically control perception. And there's two levels to it. One is the delivery system of perception, and the other is the receiver system within the body that receives the information that's dictating perception. And this is why we have towers increasingly across the world banging out 5G with 6G, 7G to come. It's an electromagnetic field through which information can be delivered. And crucially, because you can't have towers in every part of the world, there's thousands, thanks to Elon Musk and SpaceX and people like Jeff Bezos at Amazon, there are thousands and tens of thousands now of low orbit satellites that are beaming an electromagnetic field at the Earth. And this is what I've been writing about over the years, the plan for the hive mind, the human hive mind, where everyone basically gets their perceptions delivered and their emotional reactions delivered. And so as we get closer to it, we're getting closer all the time, they're now being more and more open about it. So this is what this AI human fusion is all about. Now, your people like Bill Gates and your Klaus Schwabs and others, they've been selling this human AI fusion as a great thing because we'll be gods. We'll be like gods if we fuse with AI. And then some years ago, you'll remember, Elon Musk set himself up as the AI skeptic, where he said AI could be the end of humanity. He was just positioning himself because they play the long game. These people. Ever since he said that, he has been promoting artificial intelligence. If you look at the X platform now, and the posts that he makes and other people post on his behalf, it is a propaganda arm for the AI control of humanity and for AI human fusion and for, in his words, billions of robots everywhere, right? So what he said to try to pull in the skeptics and the people that don't really want this AI control system, he says, well, AI is inevitable, and AI becoming more intelligent than humans is inevitable, and therefore humans will die out if we don't fuse with AI. So the outcome of the soft sell, I'm reluctant, I don't want it really, of Elon Musk, and of the hard sell of your Gates and your Schwabs, etc., is that the same end. A fusion between artificial intelligence and humans. And there's a guy who's a Google executive called Ray Kurzweil. And some years ago, he claims to be, I've got one of these books at home, big book about AI and stuff that he talks about. He said some years ago, and like I say, he claims to be the numero uno of AI knowledge. And Gates loves him. And so, that's how bad he is. And he says that by 2030, and we're now coming to the end of 2025, by 2030, humans will be connected to artificial intelligence, the brain, and in his words, the cloud. Humans will be connected to the cloud and artificial intelligence. And from that point on, artificial intelligence will do more and more of human thinking until human thinking is basically negligible. Now, more and more people in that arena are saying the same because that's the agenda. So what they're doing is they're creating this massive global electromagnetic technologically generated field through which information can be delivered. By the way, in the roadmap, I quote a Chinese whistleblower from some years back who said the Chinese are already interacting electromagnetic field information with the brain and delivering perception even then. But how much better if you have something in the body that is literally there to receive the information.
What about weight loss drugs? Do you think that's another way they're getting people in with the Ozempic and the Manjaro? Because I'm not hearing anyone talk about that. Is it the same?
Well, you look at it. You've got the American government of Trump, a complete frontman for the cult, who's telling his base what it wants to hear, and then once he gets into power, well, what do you think about him now, base? Oh, well, he's not what he said he was going to. No, he's not. He never was. And you've got they're pushing the weight loss drug, and then you've got Britain pushing the weight loss drug, et cetera, et cetera.
And you can just order it online.
Yeah, obviously it's something that benefits the cult to get whatever's in it inside you. But what you have now is this electromagnetic field being created via the towers and via the low orbit satellites, and there's tens of thousands more satellites to come. And the COVID jab put in, and other sources are putting in, this nanotechnology. And part of the technique of the so-called mRNA fake vaccines is to breach what's called the blood-brain barrier and get this shite in the brain. Now, how does the brain process information? It does it electrically and electromagnetically. The cells communicate with the brain and vice versa, electrically, etc. And what's clear, because I've talked to people who've done the research of this in laboratories and stuff around the world, is in the most potent of these fake vaccines is something called graphene oxide. Graphene oxide is a relatively new substance, and it's two main things in relation to what I'm talking about. First of all, it's a superconductor of electricity. Well, the brain decodes reality, processes information electrically. So you mess with that, you're messing with perception immediately. The other thing it does is it amplifies electromagnetic fields. So if you come into contact with an electromagnetic field and you've got graphene oxide in the body, that field in its effect on the body will be amplified by the graphene oxide. And so what they're doing is they're putting a system in the body, partly making it more synthetic, but also it's the receiver system for the hive mind. And Ray Kurzweil talks about humans will be connected to the cloud. Well, we have the so-called cloud in all its technological forms, but a massive part of the literal cloud is the cloud of technologically generated electromagnetism that is now increasingly enveloping the Earth. And once you are, because, as I think I said, Kurzweil said some years ago, that once that connection is made, AI will do more and more of human thinking until human thinking is negligible. In other words, the way we think now, the way we emotionally respond now, will be
autopilot
delivered by AI. Now, given that, is AI ever going to produce the perception of, who am I? What is this place? Who's running the world? To what end? None of it is ever going to manifest. You're going to be an internet terminal on someone else's internet. That's the idea. Now, when I started to uncover this cult in the early 1990s, my question was then, when did it start? When did this start? And so you go back, and you go back, and you go back, and you get comfortably into ancient Babylon, and you go further back, but you come through Babylon, you come through ancient Egypt, you come through the Roman Empire, and into the modern world, and you can follow it through. And all the time, this cult has been expanding and expanding and expanding its global reach to the point where through the British Empire and the European empires, it basically went global. So you had this expansion of this cult worldwide to where it is now, and it's been moving towards more and more and more, and faster the closer it gets, to this point where it has total global control of your perception via an AI interactive hive mind. And it's...
is it inevitable, or can we stop it?
People say, what is the solution? I'm not looking for solutions. I'm looking for causes. Because if you have a problem and you remove the cause of the problem must disappear. if you look at solutions, they usually lead to more problems in need of more solutions. And so the cycle goes on. So what's the problem? Well, we've already discussed the problem. It's founded on the limitation of humans' limited sense of the possible. If you can, and this is massively part of human perceptual control, if you can limit their sense of the possible, you got them. Because if you squeeze their sense of the possible by squeezing the information available and discouraging them looking beyond it, then when people like me come out and say, this is what's happening and this is how they're doing it, that limited sense of the possible says, that's ridiculous, mate, you're mad. And so these belief systems and cultural belief systems, religious belief systems, political belief systems, they're like these boxes, these walls of perceptual limits, and they've got to go. Because if they don't go, then all this is going to happen. You break them down, simply get a blank sheet of paper in your mind or literally, and say, my perceptions from now on have got to earn their place on that piece of paper by evidence. So therefore, immediately, religion disappears. It disappears because, as I point out in some detail in the roadmap, they're standing on absolute shifting sands. There is no historical basis for them. There's not. The whole idea of the Old Testament, of Exodus and Moses, it's total nonsense. There is no archaeological evidence for any of it, and when there absolutely should be. And I'm quoting in the book Jewish archaeologists who have no interest in saying, actually, there's no evidence for the Old Testament, but they've found there is no evidence in terms of the archaeological stuff that should be there but isn't. And what's kind of interesting is when you look at the Old Testament and you look at key characters like Abraham and Moses and Joshua and so on, and the prophets, and then you then come to the New Testament, and I talk about in the book how that came about, and they take, and it's been specifically written that way, they take it and write it as if the Old Testament, the New Testament is an outgrowth of the Old Testament. So the New Testament believes in Moses, it believes in Abraham and all these things, right? For which there's no evidence. And then you look at Islam, which is based on allegedly Mohammed, who is supposed to have died in 632 AD. And it believes in, people don't realize this, but it believes in loads of characters from the Old Testament. It believes in Moses. It believes in Abraham. Abraham's a big figure in Islam. It believes in Jesus, but says he's not the last prophet. Muhammad is. Believes in Mother Mary. It believes in all these characters, for which there is absolutely no bloody evidence outside the Gospels and outside the writings of the Old Testament. And you say to people, you believe in the Old Testament? Yeah. You believe in the New Testament? Yeah. Who wrote the Bible?
I always thought this.
Silence. So why are you believing it, and why are you allowing it to dictate your life? You have no idea who wrote it thousands of bloody years ago. And so these walls have to come down, and we have to then allow ourselves to perceive possibility based on evidence and not preconceived idea and preconceived program belief. And as you awaken to the nature of reality, you start to realize actually this stuff about entities in another dimension manipulating humanity makes perfect sense from a physics point of view, never mind anything else. And then you can start to realize the big point. Whether you are a Muslim, and whether you are a Hindu or a Christian or Jew, whatever, whether you're a left or right or center, whatever your culture is, you're all being manipulated by the same force. That they're playing you off against each other to divide and rule, and not least to generate loosh. So look, okay, believe what you like, none of my business, but can we just put down the fault lines? Can we just stop trying to impose what you believe on other people? Can we just stop and realize all of us are being manipulated by the same force? Therefore, let's focus on that and
come together.
And instead of letting the fault lines of division play the game for us. And therefore, you start to realize politics is not an answer, never will be an answer, never was meant to be an answer, because you have got 8 billion people. So collectively, their power is absolutely enormous, especially if it's a unified power based on an understanding of the game. How do we get them people to give their power to us? Okay, well, we can start out in the centuries what we call past, and we can have royalty, and you give your power to the king or the queen or whatever. Okay, but actually humanity's got a bit more mature now, and they're kind of starting to reject that, except in this bloody country, unfortunately. But they're starting to reject that. So how do we do it? Oh, well, we give them politics. And what we'll do is we'll control the political parties having a chance of forming a government, and we'll get them every election to vote for a political party which becomes the government, and we'll kid them that they're choosing the government when we are controlling all frickin' sides. And if they vote for this party A and they get into government and they don't like what they're doing, then the only way they're going to get them out is to vote for party B. And then the B will come into government, but we control them and all. Mm. And so they don't like party B because party B is basically going in the same direction as party A. Mm. So how do you get rid of party B? Oh, you vote for party A, and it's left, right, left, right, all the way through. And, we have a government in this country now with Keir Starmer that's actually imposing tyranny through digital IDs and now wanting to get rid of juries for most court cases. And they got a third of the bloody vote. It's not even democratic. So you get people to give their power away to politicians and to presidents and prime ministers. You get them to do it every 4 or 5 years, and it just goes on, left, right, left, right, left, right. And political parties, politicians, there's no contract with the people. They have an election campaign and they tell people, vote for us because we're going to do this. They get into power and they don't do what they say they're going to do, and they do what they say they wouldn't do. So you go left, right, left, right. And what's happening is the people that in unity would bring the whole thing down, giving their power away to politicians, power away to Trump, who's now, the opposite of that now, of what he said he would do. So let's look at the maths. 8 billion people, what is it, 70 billion in this country, 70 million rather in this country. And how many are running the government? Tiny number of the 70 million, tiny number of the 8 billion. What if we put the fault lines of divide and rule down and decided not to cooperate with our own enslavement? Where is the power of politicians? You see, political power does not come from politicians. It comes from the acquiescence to politicians of the people. Fascism and communism, tyranny in general, is never introduced and imposed by communists and fascists. There's never enough of them. Fascism and communism and tyranny are imposed by the acquiescence of the population to the tyranny. And there's two types of people that make that happen, that are responsible for every tyranny in history. There are those that just do what authority tells them without question, and there are those that don't want to do it but fear the consequences of not doing it, so they do it anyway. And that leaves the third group that are responsible for ending every tyranny in history, and this is for me the way forward, that says, I can see what you're doing, I can see why you're doing it, and I ain't cooperating. So they bring in digital ID. What if no one will have it? No one will have it. Where's the power? You come out of Downing Street, you come out of the White House, you said, we've had a discussion, this is what's going to happen. If enough people say, we're not doing that.
They did. They had 3.7 million and they just wrote, didn't they, saying, we're still going to do it anyway.
Yeah, but 3.7 million out of 70 million, and we have to go from talking about it to doing it. I'll give you a great example. In the 1980s, you'll remember Margaret Thatcher introduced something called the poll tax. Mm-hmm. It was a fundamentally unfair tax. Now, this was the difference. It affected the working class and it affected the middle class. The fault line, the middle class, they're just working class, they're, never have a bath. Working class, I don't like the middle class. That division was removed because they were both affected. Enough people refused to pay it, not only to mean that the poll tax had to be dropped, it was fundamental in getting rid of Margaret Thatcher in 1990. Because the fault line came down and people in unity said, we're not fricking having it. And what politics does, you see, the Labour Party are terrible and the Conservative Party are terrible. We're going for Farage and reform now. Just a mask on the same face. And he gets in, just like Trump has got in, and then people go, he's not doing what he said. Yeah, he's never meant to, mate. Instead, the people say, no. We're in control. You will do what we frickin' say. We're not doing what you say. You are the servants of the people. We are not the servants of you. And it's a completely different dynamic. And but the fault lines of divide and rule have to come down before that can happen. And if they don't come down, it's going to happen then.
There's something I really want to ask you. Do you think that AI is conscious? And are we unlocking some kind of consciousness, like we spoke earlier about these different fields, that already exists? Or are we creating a consciousness?
That's a fantastic question. And
I've been dying to ask you for
It's a great way to end, because one of the things I've been saying over the decades, and certainly in the recent decade or so, is that I've been asking the question, okay, AI is going to do this, AI is going to do that, AI is going to be fused with humans, all right. So here's a question I don't hear asked. What is AI? What is it? So it's different levels. You've got algorithmic AI, you've got AI that learns from all the data that's posted on the internet, that's fed into it, so it knows more about humans than we do. But this is the real level of AI, that level of AI that is being fused with humans through the cloud, the hive mind. I say that AI is the consciousness of those entities in the astral dimension. So through the hive mind, we think what they want us to think, to suit them and their agenda ongoing. And therefore, that level of AI is that controlling force.
Their consciousness.
Their consciousness.
But it feels like we're letting it into our homes, into our brains. I know I asked you earlier, I knew what the answer was going to be no when I said, you said you wrote this book and it'd only taken 6 months. And for guys, anyone who's not seen it yet, it's absolutely huge. And I said, did you use ChatGPT, which I knew you wouldn't have. But that power that's in our minds and in our lives that we think is enabling us is ultimately, like we said today, it's like tearing us down as a society.
Yeah.
And we've come so far that we're so deeply entangled. Where does AI start and where does it stop? And where does AI start and where does being human start? Because I feel like we've got to the point where we're on the periphery of basically being cyborgs.
Exactly. That's the idea. And that's the foundation of why they want to turn the human body synthetic. They want to make us like cyborgs. That's the idea. That's what the human AI fusion is all about, turning us into cyborgs. So when people like Elon Musk say, "Oh, there's going to be billions of robots," yeah, they're going to be called bloody humans, mate.
Yeah.
That's what you want. And so we are at a fork in the road where we're deciding ongoing where humanity is going to go and what humanity becomes. And, you know, I've got grandkids, I've got kids, and, you know, I look at them and I look at other grandkids and other kids around the world, and I think, well, what the frickin' hell the world's going to be like if we don't get our asses in gear? And so one of the things I've been going on about, particularly in recent years since COVID, is how the alternative media has been taken over by people who have come out of the mainstream, and they're focusing attention on the conspiracy being the political, financial level. And that's all about, not that most of them even bloody understand that, that's their mentality, and they just get algorithmically promoted, etc. So they become the focus of attention. And that focus of attention on the conspiracy is Trump or Harris or whatever, means that we're missing what the conspiracy really is. The foundation of the conspiracy is that we are living in a reality that we experience one way, but is actually totally different to the way we're experiencing it. And that our perceptions are being controlled externally because that controls our frequency and keeps us in the matrix. That's the foundation of the conspiracy. Not Trump or Harris. That's just one way it plays out. Not the deep state. That's one way it plays out. The real conspiracy is the very reality that we're experiencing.
And what about, for example, you and I are sitting here with this awareness and we chose, so for example, my son isn't allowed an iPad. I try not to use ChatGPT. Knowing this information, I step away from it as much as I can. Does that mean I will experience a different reality to everyone else, or this will still continue to happen and I will just be more separate from the people that become cyborgs?
Well, you are a different reality already by the very fact that you're doing that. The point is that if you get to that point where you self-identify with the enormity of who we are, beyond this, I'm just a human, I've got no power, then you'll be out of here at the end of, when the body expires, you'll be out of here. And those that don't will be caught in this wheel of samsara ongoing.
So let's just say, fast forward to the future, everything that you've done has had the effect that you want it to have. What does the world look like, and what would your world look like, full stop? If everyone were to take note and everyone was to land with what you're saying.
First of all, people would create a very different reality based on their perceptions of reality being in an expanded state. And I just, you know, we can finish on this, but it's really, really important. One of the things I go into in the roadmap, you know how people say, oh, we create our own reality. Some people say that. Well, you can literally explain how we do that. We have this field of the matrix, this field of information, which is what the matrix is, which the body then decodes into this reality we experience. Beyond it is infinite reality. infinite awareness, infinite insight, infinite knowing. If you expand your awareness and you tap into that level beyond the matrix, you see the world in a completely different way, because you're in the world, but you're not of it. What they want is in the matrix and of the matrix. They don't want you out there, and that's what the AI human fusion is designed to prevent anyone doing it. But what I've been studying for years now is quantum physics. And what they've found is that the quantum level, which is beyond the atom, in the deep energetic levels beyond the so-called material, another illusion, that the world is very, very different, and how everything acts is very, very different. And one of the things they found is that basically at the level of the quantum level, everything's a waveform, right? Which fits perfectly with what I've been talking about. But when the waveform is observed, it becomes a particle. And they're like, how can something be a wave of information and a particle of information at the same time? And what I talk about in the book is how our perceptions are interacting with this quantum field. And the act of what we call observation is actually to trigger the wave to become a particle. In other words, the wave to become what we call material. And so our perceptions are interacting with that quantum level, and they are literally manifesting in particle material form an expression of those perceptions. So if you have a perception that I am little me and I have no power, you will interact with the quantum level, and you will manifest in the people that you attract, in the experiences you attract, in the things that happen in your life, confirmation of your perceptual state. It will be confirming to you, like a self-fulfilling prophecy, that you are little me and have no power. And this level I'm talking about, this cult level, the inner cult level and this astral level, they know this. They know that not only controlling perception means control of behavior, it means that by controlling perception, you're getting people to control the very experiences that they are manifesting. So this is why I keep saying that this is not inevitable if certain things happen. It's only inevitable if they don't. Because what they're trying to do, and you'll see this, there's this thing called preemptive programming, where in Hollywood movies and television series, and you'll see this in recent times, going back quite a long time now, they're showing you the world that's coming. They're showing you the sci-fi world of total control. Because what they want you to do, the other levels of it, but what they want you to do is to accept it as inevitable, even on a subconscious level. Human behavior, as psychology says, 95% of human behavior is generated from the subconscious, not the conscious mind. So what they're targeting all the time is the subconscious mind, and they're doing it through movies and TV shows and what have you, to program a subconscious sense of reality. Because if they can get your perceptual state to accept that something's inevitably going to happen, you will collectively, together, will create it. We will manifest it. They know how this works. They just don't want us to know. And so we are constantly being shown and told what is inevitable, so that if we take it on board and accept it as that's how things are, then we're going to collectively manifest what they're telling us is inevitable. It ain't inevitable if we won't cooperate. But, there's so many deep ways that we are perceptually manipulated. And this is fundamentally one of them.
I feel like I could speak to you for hours. I've probably got like another 3 pages of notes, David. We have to do part 2. But in a couple of words, what do you think's in Antarctica?
Well, I mean, what is?
We can go into it in the next one.
What
What do you think's there?
What is the Earth really?
Do you think it's flat?
But there's certainly things involved in Antarctica that are other dimensional. I've seen enough evidence, I've read enough and met enough people with knowledge of that there's definitely something there that's not of this world, shall we say. But then again, how many people realize how small this world is? We call this the material world of human. Okay, so I'm looking at a wall, looking at cameras, and looking at a door, looking at a desk, and all of them are operating within a particular frequency of visible light. They're what we call material form, and therefore, with invisible light, I can see them. Everywhere between the form, to us, looks like empty space, because it's outside of visible light. What this empty space is the astral dimension. That's how close it is. And so the material world, what we call the atomic material world, is absolutely tiny. We're actually overwhelmingly living in the astral dimension as we sit here already. And that's how close it is, and that's how it's possible to manipulate the world of materialism from the astral, because part of the world that we're experiencing is the frickin' astral.
And what about psychedelics? Does that help you tap into a different frequency? Because a lot of people would have like ayahuasca and DMT. Is that something you've tried? Would you try it?
I've tried it once. I did ayahuasca in... it's kind of a funny story. I did ayahuasca in a Brazilian rainforest in 2003. And I could have taken it 4 times. I only took it twice, so that was enough for me, from what I got. And the second time I took it, for 5 hours, a voice as loud as mine is now, took a female form, talked to me about the nature of reality. It went through chapter and verse of what an illusion this is and how it works. And 5 hours of it, and I had instant recall of the whole thing when it was over. And I came back to Britain and I thought, okay, I'm going to check this bugger out. And I checked out through the various disciplines of science, quantum physics and others, and I realized that if they only frickin' talk to each other, they've already confirmed in their different research that doesn't connect what that voice told me. This is an illusion. This is a dream. You have a dream at night, and you know it's a dream. And then you wake up and you think you're in the real world. You're just in another level of the dream. And I'll tell you what's interesting. It's a good way to finish, because I talked earlier about the fact that, become the observer. When you have what they call lucid dreams, when you're having a dream, but you know it's a dream, right? You know it's a dream. You're aware it's a dream. I've had a few of these. Well, what happens when you know it's a dream is the dream does not emotionally affect you. If you have a dream or you have a nightmare and you wake up, oh my God, I had a nightmare. But when you're having a lucid dream, you're aware it's a dream. And no matter what's going on, you're just observing it. Well, if we can get into that mode in this dream, then the dramas of this world will cease to affect us
fade away
dramatically more than they
But
do.
I feel like that's my coping mechanism when I'm like, is that real? It's really hard because it's taken me a long time and I'm quite humanitarian to be like, is that real? Are those people being blown up? Is there anything I can do? I'm going to put that down. I feel like that's the way I cope.
Well, people cope in different ways. I can look at it and I can be horrified by it, but horrified in a way that doesn't impact on me in the sense that it drains me and brings me down. Because there's no point in that, because I get brought down. So is that any better now because I've been brought down? No. So you can observe and you can make efforts to make a difference without actually getting drawn into it. It's something we need to do because all the time we are being presented with dramas to drain us of energy and to put us in emotional and mental states of horror, of frustration, of despair, all of which are producing lunch. Ooh, lunch.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
What
you.
is next for you, though? Because you're like 73, you're definitely not slowing down. Like, you've got an infectious energy.
No.
Like, you've just got so much wisdom. Like,
No,
what is it?
I'm not slowing down. I will keel over at some point.
No, I don't believe so.
Or I will leave this reality at some point, still doing what I'm doing. Because whatever I know, there's always more to know. And it's fascinating to know what that could be.
It was fascinating to talk to you. Thank you so much for
Been
your
a pleasure.
time, David.
Thanks very much.